think it's a rather appropriate day to be discussing this. We've had economics for ethics, but it's time we had ethics for economics. This is a good day in relation to what's going on in Europe. My speech was written 2 weeks ago, and it's no more relevant now than it was 2 years ago. I suppose what's happening is we've tackled the issues on a national basis, but there has to be more done on a European basis. The Euro's institutional framework lamented the insufficient fiscal disciplines imposed by European unions. We had insufficient and an absence of mechanisms to control economic imbalances, and we ended up in a situation where our country, as well as several other countries, couldn't sustain the level of debt that was imposed upon them, and it's largely due to the banks. The NTMA have their report out this morning, and they talk about what their function is within the banking system, and they talk about the IMF having a significant function within that. And unfortunately, we lost some of our economic sovereignty, and I can say that we lost it for 2 reasons. The imprudence of the banks combined with a lack of foresight by the government. I, like many of the previous speakers, have worked in financial institutions, and as one of the last speakers just mentioned, there was a culture which was totally inappropriate. It was a financial recklessness and an inability to see what was right for the country. Financial institutions are licensed by the government. They're done so because of the significance that they play in society, what they can do to society. They are necessary, and they provide an awful lot of good. For most of us, they allow us to access a home, to get started on a property ladder, to purchase a car and get on with daily modern lives. However, greed became the culture, and short-sightedness, a complete inability to philosophize what it is an institution should be trying to achieve and what a society is trying to do also. It was like an adolescent period for our country, and we've learned costly mistakes. However, today is probably a very significant day. We're now in a position where a currency which had multiple central banks, something that I totally disagree with, and I've been on the record to say that the euro was ill-conceived to begin with. I agree with the concept of a euro, but not the way it was set up. I was lucky enough to study economics in Central Europe in around 1999-2000, and a professor of mine said you should question why Ireland goes into the euro. The idea that a currency could have multiple central banks without having a fiscal policy overriding that meant that, for example, a loan-to-deposit ratio, if you put 10 euros in deposit in a German bank, they might have lent out 12 euros, whereas in Ireland, we could have put in 10 euros and we might have lent out 22 euros. So the same currency, without having influence over your interest rates, without having influence over your duration of credit, etc., meant that we had a completely separate financial outlook on our economy than the central bank of the currency, which was inappropriate. I think the steps will come towards that as we go along. This bill is taking steps locally. The regulator, the central bank here, did not know what its role was, I'm convinced, over a period of time. And I've worked on reports for institutions that we've handed to the central bank. The level of detail, I can tell you, was comprehensive. There was nothing missing. But the philosophy as to what they were trying to achieve was wrong. The lack of knowledge within the Department of Finance, and I suppose a culture within the country where we had current income being used for current expenditure. And you don't run a country like that. You don't even run a house like that, as a matter of fact. It's like winning the lottery and using it on day-to-day spending. The whole property idea was ill-conceived, and that's what drove the banks off the edge. If you look at it today, you're in a position where, according to, not giving any information out because I don't have it, Minister there will know a great deal more than I have, but the internet at the moment has some draft documents as to what's happening in Brussels on it. And if it is to be believed, well, the idea that we're in a position to get significant interest rate cuts, which we said we would do, and we didn't do it on our own. We obviously have a pan-European strategy with this. I have sat down with many European social democrats, and I know that Christian Democrats have also done likewise. We've sat down with people from Germany, Scandinavia, Britain, France, etc. And I think that we have conveyed a message that our country was in real trouble, and as was the currency. All you had to do was pick up any financial paper or any financial magazine and you realized that it was coming to a head. And we have developed friendships and we have developed trust again. And we're in a better position than we were last year. We're in a better position than we were 4 months ago. And also I think we're in a position that, as Deputy Wallace once said there, you have to be able to work with your creditors, you have to be able to work with your institutions. And now that we're in a position where the European Central Bank, ironically, is doing what it's told. It's doing what it's told from the Commission, from the heads of state and from the IMF. They have realised that they needed to protect the people, because the European Union is about protecting people and it's not about wealth for a small group of people. For the project to develop, today is a very significant part, because it shows that there's a resolve to look after what is important. Also, when you look at our corporation tax, it appears it's going to remain intact, and that's another great event if that's the case also. One of the things that I'd like to highlight is I've seen auditors come into financial institutions, and the people that came in to do audits, sometimes on files that took 6 and 7 boxes, could come to your desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they'd walk out, and the only thing that they were missing were a pair of short pants for the experience that they had. They were being paid €17 an hour, and they were charged, the auditing firms were charging the time out at €200 an hour. They'd come back to your desk at 11 o'clock and said that those files were fine. I can tell you that Superman would have got through those files in 3 hours, not to mind a bunch of trainee accountants. So the culpability lies in many places, but few people is the way that I'd put it. Those that work in institutions, the vast majority of them are hard-working, honest people that do an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. The greed culture that existed amongst the very highest elite, where bonuses were on a now and here basis rather than how banking is supposed to work. It's a long-term view, it should be long-term bonuses. I think that it's something that we won't see in our lifetime again, where you have reckless promotion of people who are making short-term gains for a company or an institution. As I said, it's licensed, and the reason it's licensed, it's supposed to be prudent at all times. The diplomatic offensive appears to be working, but also we need an offensive in the country here. We might get interest rate reductions. We might end up extending the terms, doubling the terms, the length of the duration of the loans. However, where it all comes back to is there's a deficit in the country, an enormous deficit, and there's going to be more cuts. And it's the job of this government and the non-government parties to find the fairest way that we can possibly put those cuts into the country and make it viable again. We're going to have to take 2 steps back. And when you take 2 steps back, you look at what you have done heretofore. And what we've done is we have created a mess that we will clean up, and that we will go about creating growth, creating jobs again, and that's what it's all about, trying to create a standard of living and a better country for our people. I think today's a great day, and the speech that was prepared 2 weeks ago is no longer relevant, and I'm delighted to see the Minister here on the last day. And it's not that we orchestrated today to be the last day where there will be a meeting in Brussels, but it appears though that there is good news up front. However, the deficit is what we must tackle, and there's many of us in this House that have ideas, and we should convey them at all times. I'm looking forward to next Tuesday when the Taoiseach will convene the Finance Committee, which I'm a member of, and we will be able to ask him questions in relation to what's gone on heretofore. There are concerns also about what banks can do to the institutions of government. We will not allow this to happen again. The central bank has to have a role, the regulator has to have a role, but this bill actually says that the European Central Bank will have a role, will regulate, will watch, will have an overriding appearance of what is prudent lending, what is prudent financial institutions. And I'm delighted to see that happening, and I can tell you that many people throughout Europe also. We will have a better European Union, I think, and our country will be in a position to achieve real growth, have a correction, and drive forward. It's a very significant day, and I'm delighted that we're going to break up for the summer, and I wish you all a very nice break, and I hope that you'll come back here refreshed, and you might even make a trip to Kerry and tell us all about your exploits when you get back. But I wish you all a very nice break and vacation.
Thank you.